Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. Afternoon session of Breckland Planning. We have a slight change. We've got Teresa in the Democratic Services chair. Julie's had to go, and we're now going to do Narborough, of which is 11D 3PL 2021-0304. We've got Councillor Robert Hayes of the Parish Council and Nick Moyes, who's the agent, and Councillor Wilkinson has crossed the floor to do a presentation there as well. So this one is, you're doing this one, Rebecca?
Yeah, I'm just going to slight IT issue.
Right, just
kick me out.
IT.
Yeah, I'm trying.
So you've got some guests with you, have you, Nick?
Chairman, I've got the applicant with me.
Oh, they
But they're not speaking. So.
not speaking, but just right. Just keep you company, because otherwise you get very lonely. We know Nick from years back. He does get ever so lonely. Right, we'll just get ourselves geared up, and we'll be ready to rock and roll. That's all right. I'd say talk among yourselves, but I don't really want you doing that. So you whisper among yourselves if you wish.
Sorry. It'd be worth the wait.
Okay, I hope so. Building it up even more. I gather we must have lost Councillor Clark for the afternoon. We have lost him totally. Okay. He's gone.
Did he say two?
Yep. Okay. We'll put him as absent for this afternoon session. I'm trying to keep talking in case anyone's zoomed in and says, there's something wrong with volume. Can't hear. We're nearly there.
We are there.
We are there. Over to you then, please, Rebecca.
Apologies, members and everyone. We're in Narborough. We've got a planning application which is recommended for approval today, subject to planning conditions. Members will note from the officer report and the description of development, this is a reserve matters application following the granting of outline planning permission for 6 market dwellings and 4 affordable homes. So the application site is outlined in red, roughly in the screen in front of you. There is an access to the site leading off Swaffham Road, which is just shown on the aerial photograph to the south of the application site there. And also you'll note the bank of trees, which is also shown to the southwest of the application site, which will remain other than the removal of 1 tree, which I'll come on to. I've got some images. So actually the application site is slightly set back from Swaffham Road, separated from the rest of the development in Swaffham by that existing bank of vegetation. However, like I say, the principle of development is established by the granting of the outline planning permission, which established a consent for those dwellings. So just for members' information only, because like I said, the outline permission has accepted the principle for development on this site. The application site is located outside of the Narborough settlement boundary, so it's located just to the north of it. So here is the location plan that was submitted originally with the application. This shows the layout of the dwellings in a linear form across the middle section of the site. Sorry, I wanted to show this one. This shows the dwelling in a linear form across the middle section of the site. So you can see there at the centre of the site, just to the north of Swaffham Road, you can see the access point that was approved at outline application stage. That access point, it involves the removal of one tree, and we've got an image of that to show you later. That was all agreed at outline application stage. So members, today you're only assessing the appearance, layout, scale and landscaping. So the dwellings are shown in a linear form other than plot 10, which you can see is shown at a slight angle to the rest of the dwellings. So you'll note from the image in front of you that plots 5 to 10, they are your market dwellings, and obviously they are of a larger scale than plots 1 to 4, which are 2 pairs of semi-detached dwellings, and those are your affordable housing. And like I say, you can see the layout of trees which are to be retained through the development of this site. I'd also asked you to note, members, that just to the south of Swaffham Road, that is the character of that part of Narborough. There is linear development in that location with a mix of detached, fairly large properties filling the plot with reasonably sized gardens, and then smaller semi-detached properties. With regards to the layout, the smaller dwellings, the plots 1 to 4, the affordable dwellings, have been designed specifically to meet the affordable housing need in this location. That was discussed at length with the housing officer at outline application stage, and the desire for this number of bedrooms and the types of dwellings that have been located for designed for plots 1 and 4 meet the housing need. You will, however, note from the officer report, members, that your policy with regards to affordable housing does require affordable housing to not be distinguishable from market dwellings. And as you can clearly see from this layout, the affordable dwellings are much smaller and semi-detached properties in smaller plots than those of the market dwellings. Again, I would refer you back to what I've just said. These affordable dwellings have been designed specifically to meet the local housing need in that area. And on that basis, although those properties are distinguishable in terms of size, we think they're still acceptable, and they will be using the same materials and and landscaping strategy. So on that basis, we consider that this layout to be acceptable. And also you'll note from the officer report that this was the indicative layout that was shown at outline application stage with the application when it was granted approval outline. Members will note just at the frontage of the site, you'll see the dotted line, which is where the tree is going to be removed. As I say, I've got an image of that, and that was agreed at outline application stage. And then just north of that, you can see some black boxes. That is the area, the natural clearing within the application site where the applicants have recommended placing a bin store. That bin store can be conditioned to ensure it's deliverable, and that's to get over the fact that there's over 25-metre drag distance to the highway for the bins. But again, members, I would remind you that the principle of development for this number of dwellings has already been accepted in this location. And therefore, as a practical solution to that, we're asking for a bin store closer to the highway. So people have the ability to position their bins on bin days. And that bin store will be conditioned to be big enough to serve the development. Just with regard to the bin store, I know there has been some local concern about impact on those trees, and that was considered our outline stage. Like I say, the one tree to be removed was agreed at outline stage, and there was agreement to works being no dig with parts of the highway where they came in the RPAs of the trees. That will be the same condition that's applied to the bin store, so there'll be no dig in the RPA of significant trees. Sorry, members, there's a better plan for you, more zoomed in. I'll just give you a minute because it does give you a bit more of a zoomed in area just of that. So if you look to the bottom of the screen, the circle dotted line, that's the tree to be removed. And then just to the north of that, you can show you the bits, shows you what exactly the location of the bin stores. Apology, that is a better plan for you. And it does show you the difference in the plots better from plots 1 to 4, from 5 to 10. So the dwellings that are proposed is quite a simple elevational treatment. So you can see here in front of you the 2 pairs of semi-detached dwellings which will meet the affordable housing. Initially, the affordable housing officer did request confirmation that they meet the technical house standards, which are set out in policy How 10 of the local plan. We've had that confirmation and we've measured those ourselves, and we're happy that they now meet the standards. And this is just a slightly differential porch treatment to these two pairs of affordable dwellings, but these are the same size as the other two. And like I say, that was what was agreed with housing. In terms of the other market dwellings, there is a mix. This is plots 5 and 9. It is set out in the officer report that these plots, most of these plots through definitely the summer months, will be largely hidden by the vegetation that will be retained at the frontage of the site. They have quite simple elevational treatment, but they include the large glazing panels of a more rural barn style development. But I think that they are quite simplified residential dwellings. And here you can see the plots 6 and 8, just showing that larger glazing panel on those elevations. And the final house type for you for plot 10, that's the one at the angle at the end of that layout, a slightly larger house type. So you'll note from the officer report that there was a query about the materials to be used within the application site, in that the applicant proposes to use plain tiles rather than pan tiles. We have gone back to the applicants in this regard, and they've provided this image of the. This isn't the site, obviously, they haven't started, so don't worry. This is an image of a dwelling they've built elsewhere. It shows the large glazing panels. It's not the same design, but it's a similar design. And this is the materials and effect that they're going for. Like I say, we did question through the application process whether it would be more appropriate to use pan tiles, because that's a normal Norfolk material. But given the profile that is in these tiles, they're not plain flat tiles, there is profile to them. We do think that these materials, not exactly this house type, but similar to this house type, would be acceptable in this location and suitable for the wider character of the area. We've also obviously assessed the application in terms of amenity. That's the amenity of the garden spaces for the future occupants, and obviously the distances from other residential dwellings are quite significant given that large bank of vegetation in between. But that assessment of amenity is undertaken in the report and considered acceptable. So we do have some site photographs of the site. This is obviously with Swaffham Road behind us, looking into the application site. And the same again, but obviously bringing Swaffham Road into the picture. This just shows that tree coverage at the front. It's not as dense as it looks from the aerial photographs, I don't consider. But you can see that there are several trees within that vegetation bank, as you can see by the trunks. And we're just moving through those tree trunks into that natural sort of clearing that's making way to the application site behind. And this is just a picture of the access, which is to be widened as agreed under the outline planning permission. And you can see the tree there that's going to be removed to make way for the access. That's already been agreed. But again, I thought that was important because the tree looks quite grand from the aerial photograph, but it is important for members that access and that tree removal was already considered at outline stage. You will note from the comments to the application, there is some concerns about some detritus within the application site, some rubbish that has been put in within the application site. The applicants have helpfully provided some images of what that rubbish is. Basically, the field was previously used for the growing of strawberries. So there was these sort of, not polytunnels, but mini polytunnels covered in like a plastic sheeting to help the growth of the strawberries. That the site has been cleared, but this materials are left on the site. The applicant says temporarily left on the site, but obviously with the granting of planning permission, this material would all be removed from the site and they would carry on with the building of development. Just with regards to the trees, there was some concerns raised by the comments to the application. There was additional tree removal being proposed within the application site. There is no additional tree removal being proposed over and above that within the original tree survey, which the tree officer has no objection to, subject to the conditions with regards to no dig of the access, which is on the outline, and no dig with the bin store, which we can apply to this application. The foul drainage of the site, which I know is a local concern, that was imposed as a condition on the outline planning consent, and the officer report updates to say that surface water should be dealt with via a condition on this permission. We would usually deal with the surface water drainage at the outline application stage. That wasn't done, but given the principle of development's been established, we think that the surface water matter can be suitably addressed by a condition on this reserved matters. Matters of ecology were looked at and conditioned at the outlined application stage, and no need to be repeated here. The affordable housing was acceptable to the housing officer and team. With regards to contamination, this was assessed at outline application stage as well. I've covered the matter of the rubbish on the site to be removed from the development. And members should note there is a condition on the outline application which requires site investigation, remediation and implementation of that remediation scheme, which our environmental health teams consider sufficient to deal with any contamination that could arise from this site. So members, on the basis of what I've shown you, we are satisfied that this reserved matters application is acceptable in terms of the character of the area and the impact on amenity and all of the matters that I've explained. And we have recommended this one for approval subject to conditions.
Thank you, Rebecca. Okay, Councillor Wilkinson, would you like to go first or last? You want to go last?
Last.
Well, I've got Councillor Hayes first, but I'm asking if you want to go first or last. You want to go last then, yeah? Okay, fine. Switch your mic on. You've got 3 minutes.
Oh, it's me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. The outline planning permission had expired on this reserve matters application, and the reserve matters was applied for through a loophole in the government COVID-19 planning applications. Planning applications extension to the outline planning permission. Sorry, I should just hold with that one there. It was given permission. They come back through a loophole in the government regulations for extensions for planning applications. The outline planning was given by a planning officer from an office in Salford, who probably didn't know where Breckland was, let no visited. We had that an issue, members will remember. The layout of this development is dense. Section 12 of the MPPF planning policies HOU 1, Gen 2 and Con 1 state a development must preserve or enhance the existing character of the area. The design and layout of this development does not meet any of these planning policies anyway. There is no linear line on that side of the road to follow. I had it in here that I will go through it, but it has been addressed by the officer. Yeah. Anyway, a significant amount of trees not identified by the tree officer will have to be removed to accommodate this development. The materials proposed to use were grey roof tiles, white plastic windows, doors and black guttering and downpipes. These materials were mentioned in the report I took to the chairman's panel. As you can see, they've been altered today. Along with the density, the vehicle turn-in requirement at the properties is minimum. There is no room for refuge bins to be kept on the individual properties. Now, these weren't outlined at outline plan permission. That's been brought forward with the officer for this reserve matters. And they come to a conclusion that it would be satisfactory to put a bin store in the middle of all the rest of the trees and fauna and foliage. Anyway, we feel that it can't be, this cannot be constructed in the woodland without impacting on significant trees. According to planning policy Con 1 and ENV6, plus the laying of the water and electricity to the development, resulting in more unnecessary destruction of the woodland. Only a single track access is planned, which would result in standing traffic on the very fast A47 road. The developer has not submitted detailed plan for discharge of foul water or surface water. They state that they will submit these plans if they get planning permission, suggesting a communal package treatment plant to the rear of the properties. This cannot be built in this area as it is outside the development red line. The housing mix does not comply with planning policy HOU 7. The housing enabling officer stated that the affordable housing should accord with policies, integrate into a residential layout or a small cluster. In my opinion, the proposed affordable housing has been an afterthought. Narborough have met their housing target set out in the Breckland local plan. The last being a
Thank you,
development of-
councillor. I think.
I just need to get this in.
Go on
I'll
in,
just sum
go
up.
for it. I'm in a good mood.
Yeah, Narborough have met their housing target set out in the Breckland local plan, the last being a development of 40 affordable homes with the building to commence in April 2022. In conclusion, members, this development will not be a benefit to Narborough or the wider Breckland area. And if you can indulge me, Chairman, the concerns with the polythene, which has been rotting there for about 5 or 6 years. We've had difficulties in trying to get it removed.
Yeah,
Me as a member.
it has been mentioned about site
Yeah,
clearance.
and I got a letter here from a professor of sustainability at Cambridge University. And he's a research director on sustainability and management of environmental things, research and different things like that.
Yeah.
Now he's saying now that this is now extensive research to show that plastic degrades. It releases toxins that have negative effects on the human health, besides hazard for wildlife that may ingest the plastic, such as the deer that frequent the field.
Okay,
And I can say at this for members that the woodland is owned by another party to the landowner. And
Okay.
There's another owner who owns some more woodland in front there, which you've been shown.
yeah, that's
That
fine.
is not in the applicant's ownership.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, can we have councillor Robert Hayes, please, of the Parish Council? 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. Narborough Parish Council objects to these reserved matters. Housing, affordable housing must be indivisible from the rest of the development, but as you've seen, these are starkly different. The housing enabling officer has recommended 2-bedroom affordable properties, but having them placed so tightly together with minimal outdoor space is the applicant's own design. The case officer agrees this does not accord with the policy for affordable housing, but suggests the development size and its location can make this acceptable. No further evidence is offered for this, and the opposite seems to be clearly the case. The small development size means there are only basic affordable houses or grander market houses, with nothing in between to soften this contrast. The location, as seen, is behind the woodland, which isolates it from Narborough, meaning, again, no houses are available to soften this distinction. This will leave the larger affordable properties dominating this will leave the affordable houses dominated by the far grander detached market houses. This does not represent the level of social inclusion the parish aspires to. The Parish Council also objects to the unusual plan for the collection of household waste. It was only recently recognised that collection lorries would not enter the development well after the outline planning stage. The developer now proposes installing a bin collection area outside the development red line on land they don't own or control. There is no agreement in place with the landowner for this, nor any plan for how it will remain in perpetuity. The bin area is to sit either side of an already necessarily narrow access road and within actual woodland. The bin drag distance from the dwelling to the collection area is excessive, and it's almost certain the bins will simply be left permanently at the collection point, as happens elsewhere. There is not enough capacity in the plan to allow this to happen, and no assessment has been made on how placing refuse bins within a woodland would impact on the wildlife listed in the ecology report. Concerningly, the applicant requests this matter be left as just another one of many conditions determined at some later point after building is underway. This awkward solution is very much the only option the applicant has. It's certainly not promoting a high quality design choice and fails to accord with policy COM 1. To summarise, the Parish Council believe this application fails to satisfy policy for affordable housing and policy for high quality design. Narborough has already exceeded its housing allocation by some way, and a further 10 houses on top of this total are of little benefit to the village. The harm this development presents far exceeds that minimal benefit, making the planning balance unsupportable. We request this reserve matters application is rejected. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got Nick Moyes now. I'll extend your time slightly to cover. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think I'll probably need it. In fact,
No.
after the planning officer's presentation, I don't think there's very much for me to say, but there probably is now. Just to confirm, I think, and emphasise the point that the site does have outline planning permission. That outline application was accompanied by an indicative site layout plan. The plan that's in front of you today for reserved matters is very, very similar to that plan in all respects. And just to confirm that access was also part of that outline application, was as approved as part of that outline application. And again, the plan in front of you today shows identical access arrangements. There's no change to that. And by extension, there's no change to the proposals in respect of removal of trees. As you heard, the access uses what is effectively a clearing in the tree belt to gain access to the rear of the site. In terms of layout and design, it's very much a case of design that follows the character of the area as it stands currently. So you've heard that the linear form of the development really reflects existing development along Swaffham Road, which is principally linear in form. Obviously, there are some differences in setbacks, but it's a linear form generally. The houses would be set well back from the road behind the tree belt, and so the impact on the street scene would be relatively small. The main views of the development would be along the access. In terms of trees, good separation distances would be maintained between the houses and the trees. The houses themselves would stand in very good sized plots, including the affordable housing, and they would all enjoy a good standard of amenity with an open outlook. In terms of the house designs, yes, they are very simple, and the objective there is to have clean lines, again reflecting the relatively simple form of architecture in the area. Shape of the houses and the scale, two-storey houses, again would reflect character of existing development. In terms of external materials, I think that is a good point to raise, and the applicant is certainly very happy for further discussions to take place on that, and for those materials to be agreed through a condition in the normal way. As you've heard, in accordance with the existing Section 106 agreement, 4 affordable units will be provided, and they have been amended in line with the recommendations of the housing officer. It perhaps just does bear mentioning that the affordable housing provision is on the basis of the old local plan requirement for 40%, and so is more generous than would be the case under the new local plan. There's no proposals to change that within this application. So for those reasons, we consider that the application does accord with relevant policies. The principle of development has been established. The circumstances behind the original outline application, I have to say, I don't think are relevant now. And so we hope members are able to support the application.
Thank you. Before we go to questions, could I just ask, because it was raised by the Parish Council, with regards to the bin storage area not being on the land owned by the applicant? Sorry, if you could put your microphone on.
Sorry, I think the bin storage was acceptable within the red line. The road was wide enough to take it within the red line.
Okay. I'm getting shaking of heads at the end.
Our opinion was that we would Grampian condition the bin storage area, which is what we've done. So members, it is acceptable on land where it can be delivered to have what we call a Grampian condition. This is conditions that we use on land that is outside the actual location plan. So as officers, we consider a Grampian condition, and 2 conditions are proposed in the officer report. And both those conditions are requiring the bin storage area to be laid out prior to occupation. So in the event they cannot lay out the bin storage, they will have to come up with a sensible solution for bin storage before those dwellings can be occupied.
Okay, thank you very much. Now it's open to questions from members. Anyone got any questions at all? Councillor Kittle-Morris.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just interested in, obviously, it's an agricultural field at the moment. Are there any services there, and what's going to happen when you try and put services in? You can take trees out. Are there, water and electricity? How are they going to get into the site?
There is a main electric line run through the side of the field, and there is also water beside the field, which is, no trees would need to be removed for this to be done.
Okay, that's been answered. Thank you. Councillor Gill.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Moyes has pointed out that the design and the appearance of this reserve matters is very similar to what was presented at outline. But at outline, we are told to take no notice of any indicative layout because it could change completely. So we shouldn't really be looking, as I see it, at, yes, it's very similar to what was presented in the first place. So we need to look at this. Do we accept the design today? Thank you.
Yeah, what with outline plan permission, you don't have to give an indicative layout, but it's indicative means this is roughly where we're going to end up, and it is very similar to the indicative plan. So that's what we're now looking at, the layout totally in this full reserve matters application.
We should not be looking at, as far as I'm concerned, with any relevance to what was presented before, because at outline we are told we are only looking at access.
Yes, you word it better than me.
So I can't speak for the agent, but my point in referencing the outline indicative layout was that it shows 10 dwellings, 4 smaller dwellings and 6 larger dwellings, and that was in principle acceptable. So I completely agree with what you're saying, because if you said, well, I don't like that indicative layout, I'd tell you, you can't consider that yet, you have to wait to reserve matters. But when we have an indicative layout, we do consider whether that location, that plot size is big enough to accommodate that number of dwellings. So I can't speak for Mr. Moyes, but I can only speak for myself. But I was referencing the outline and that layout shown because the principle, in my view, and you can disagree with me, members, but the principle has been established for 10 dwellings on that site, and therefore I do think it's relevant in that regard. But the exact design, the appearance, the scale, everything that you've looked at this morning is for determination today, members.
Okay. Any other questions? Sorry? No, because you're not on this side of the floor. Oh, go on then. I'll accept that.
The indicative, there wasn't any indicative plans. There was hardly any plans put in whatsoever. That's why you've got a list of conditions now, which shouldn't be here at reserve matters. They should have been dealt with at outline planning permission. There's no linear line on that side of the road for the development to match at all. There's no style of house like that whatsoever. There's half a dozen red brick old council houses on the other side of the road. And you must remember as well, members, that the bin store won't be in the ownership of the applicant. And there's also woodland to the left is another in another ownership as well. And the piles of polythene there rotting away. It's been impacted on that woodland for quite a.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions at all from members? No. Okay, fine. I'm going to take the vote on this one then. This is for Narborough, 3PL 2021-0304. Your officer's recommendation on on this is one of approval. Could I have a show of hands, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And those against? 2, 7, 2. Okay, thank you. This item is approved. Thank you. Okay, we've got Swaffham now, which is item 611E, 3PL 2021-0748. And I've got Paul LeGroyce, the agent, please, if you'd like to come and take a seat. Thank you, gentlemen. I'd like to move on. If you want to take your conversation outside, that's fine by me. I apologise for the wait, Mr. LeGroyce, but we often say the best till last. I don't know what it is if you can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with other items. Oh, this is you, Fiona. Lovely. She's suffering, but she'll keep going.
Yeah.
You ready? Far away.
So this is a reserve matters application for land to the west of Brandon Road in Swaffham. It comprises a 64-bedroom care home, which is use class C2, 40 assisted living dwellings, which are also use class C2, 650 square metres of retail uses in 2 separate buildings, 160 traditional dwellings, together with open space infrastructure. And they are also seeking approval of various outline conditions with this application as well. So here is the site at the very south of Swaffham, and the outline consent was granted in 2019, and that included details of access. So today we are considering appearance, layout, scale, and landscaping. So it's a 13-hectare site. And of relevance today to the layout is the special protection area and triple SI to the south of the development. There's an outline condition that requires that there's no traditional C3 dwellings within a 400-metre buffer, nor the open space they use. And you can see, because of its position at the very edge of the village along the main route, that this will form the new gateway to the village. So the design and approach is quite important on this one. So this is the roundabout that will be have a new arm to access the site. The site itself, and you can see the existing residential neighbours to the north, who that's the only residential neighbours along that boundary. And then more looking southwards towards that woodland block that we could see earlier on the aerial photographs. And a helpful aerial and angle. So this is the outline indicative plan, which was not approved because we didn't approve layout, but just to give you an idea of what you maybe saw a couple of years ago. And this is the actual proposed site plan. So the constraints have had quite a large influence on the final layout. So you can see that linear public open space that's bisected by the 2 larger roads plus a smaller road. Underneath that is actually an aviation fuel pipeline. And the owners of that don't want any buildings above it. They don't want any equipped play. They don't want any trees with deep roots. And that's just to protect the gas pipeline. We have seen comments from the body who control that group, and they are satisfied. And we've also had consideration to what we would do if it was a national gas pipeline. And it's the same sort of measures of no play space above it, etc. We also have all C3 traditional residential to the north half, and that's because of the outline condition requiring those to not be in 400 metres of their triple SI and SPA. And looking forward, this is the northern residential area. So it's it will create a unique sense of place because of the non-standard road layout, non-standard public open space. And looking at the public open space, it is not perfectly policy compliant with ENV4, which is for you to consider today. So they don't have enough play space proposed. So there is a leap and there is a lap, but there isn't enough quantum. And they don't also propose any formal sports on site. My conclusion to that was that it is acceptable in this instance, but that's for you to make your own assessment today. And that is because they have a 10% more open space than is required by policy overall. They have an unusual site constraint of the aviation fuel pipeline where they can't put any equipment above that. And they also can't put any of the normal C3 residential within that 400-metre buffer. And I think quite importantly, their section 106 of the outline does include a £200,000 off-site sports contribution so that the facilities in Swaffham can be improved or increased. And you can see this is the different house types in the little dotted colours on the dwelling. So you can see there's quite a good mix. So when you're going through it, it won't feel too repetitive. And this is where the affordable housing is going. So in 3 clusters, which the housing officer has not objected to. And we have the section 106 required mix of market to affordable as well. And the housing officer has had a look at those affordable housing sizes in terms of the number of bedrooms and the gross internal floor area and found those to be acceptable. And just looking at the design, so you might have seen similar designs for Abel's elsewhere in the district. Some of the market bungalows. There's quite a few of these market bungalows on the northernmost extent of the development, and that will help the impact to the existing neighbours. These are the flats for the affordable units. And then moving on to the care village. So this is lower density and it has this nice open space on the right hand side, which is east. And that will help that transition from the countryside coming up to Swaffham. So it's not suddenly very dense development, it will be more of a transition. All of these units are either single or 1.5 storey. And design again is similar, so they'll tie together with the market units. Well, not the market units, the traditional C3 units without the care element. And the care home. So it is a large building, but you can see they've broken down the massing from via projecting elements, by the change in the materials. So they've got some natural timber cladding, some brickwork, some render. And that where I've bubbled, they have actually added a little bit more articulation. This is the correct plan, but I just thought this was useful in terms of showing the materials and what it's actually going to look like. And because it's set behind this existing mature hedge to be retained, my view was that they've done enough for it to be acceptable and it to be an appropriate entrance to Swaffham. And now the commercial units, so they're right on the east hand side, so they'll be great for the residents as well as existing people in Swaffham. They're anticipating one of the units is going to be the co-op, but that isn't to be controlled by the planning consent, but it has been designed for that retail type use. And there's these modern, simple buildings that are overall aesthetically quite pleasing, and there'll be a nice contrast, in my view, to the brick houses, and will again just be part of that transition into the town. So the town council, following some amendments, have raised no objection to the application. In terms of tree removal, we're going to have to remove 1 category C tree, 15 metres of category C hedgerows. In my view, that's acceptable. Category C being lower, A and B being high quality. There is some more extensive hedgerow removal to facilitate the visibility displays. However, when we approve the access at the outline stage, we also had to make sure that we have visibility displays. So in my view, we've already accepted those. Having worked with the applicant, having worked with Highways and the lead local flood authority, have resulted in them saying no objection. And in addition, they are saying that they are satisfied with the associated outline conditions to be approved. So that's surface water drainage, foul drainage, contamination, archaeology, and there's a few more, all detailed in the report. So overall, there's been some fairly comprehensive work done, and the detailed design in our planning department's assessment has been found to be acceptable, subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. LaGroisse. 3 minutes, sir.
I'm not going to need anywhere near 3 minutes. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Paul LaGroisse, Managing Director of Able Homes. I'm here this afternoon to speak in support of your officer's recommendation for approval on our reserve matters application. I don't propose to cover the same points that the planning officer has already made, other than to reaffirm that there are no statutory objections to our proposed scheme, and the matters raised by the officer during consideration of our application have been promptly dealt with to enable the recommendation for approval. As you've heard, our application is for a mixed-use scheme, and it's our intention for the infrastructure, including the retail units, to be delivered on site prior to the residential units being built. So that will actually be bringing further facilities to the south of Swaffham, where there's already been a significant amount of new development, including our own site on Swan's Nest. I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you. And there we go. The introduction. I'm going to start with Councillor Bowes, then Councillor Kyber. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. LaGroisse. I'm going to ask the same question that I did to previous application. Will you be supplying Swift bricks on all your, I don't mean nest boxes, I mean Swift bricks on all your properties?
And I'm probably going to give exactly the same answer. Yes, we are. So there will be a mixture of Swift bricks, Sparrow terraces, owl boxes, and also bat boxes on the site, and hedgehog highways.
Thank you. I have another question as well.
Yes, please.
Can you confirm that or can someone confirm the cat covenant, which will help protect the SSSI from the effect of cats on the estate?
Sorry, I can't. Yes, again, I mean, the cat covenant, that covers the area within 400 metres of the SSSI. So that is the care home and assisted living units, and that will be in place on those units. Yes.
Comment, please. I just a comment on the design of the care home. It's such a large building. I do find it a bit disappointing that it isn't a more innovative design, and that we are excusing it by just saying it won't be seen because it's behind a hedge. Thank you.
Anything to say to that one?
I think the only thing I can say is that we're obviously in conversations with a couple of care home providers. There are certain requirements that they have in terms of the length of corridors and layouts that somewhat dictate how a care home is designed. And that's why when you actually look around the county as a whole, you do see quite similar designs elsewhere.
There we go. I think that's a good answer. Councillor Kyber, please.
Thank you, Chairman. If I could ask, I think your previous visit to this committee, you said you were having difficulty finding a care home partner for a site, and that was the basis for amending the application. Can you confirm that you're confident of finding a care home operator for this site?
Yes, obviously different location, and that was Watton as opposed to Swaffham. We're actually talking to two different care home providers at this point in time. Now, we're not under contract with them, but there is certainly a lot more interest in this scheme compared to elsewhere.
Please.
Can I just add to that quickly, members? This is not the forum to be debating the Watton application. That will come to a later planning committee. But it was a very different situation. The argument in that application was about saturation, and the argument in that application was with specific regard to Watton. So just in case members are concerned about the saturation, that argument was specifically with regard to Watton, but obviously that is not a matter to be considered here today.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Digan.
I was fascinated about this cat covenant. Who and how would it in the future actually be enforced? Because normally a lot of covenants are obviously go to whoever buys the houses, and if they don't enforce it, it really becomes quite useless.
I was going to say, well, although we may have some sympathies with what you're saying, Councillor, the inspector on the previous application felt that that was an acceptable means of dealing with that in terms of the impact, and that matter is not to be considered again here today. I know it's interesting. so,
Councillor Kittle Morris, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This is a question more in hope than anything else. It's a question of the roundabout and whether it's going to be made more negotiable by people coming out of Swaffham, because at the moment it's very difficult to get round.
Why is it difficult to
At
get
least it
round?
is at 60 miles an hour, Chairman.
Well, you mean, what, in the 30-mile-an-hour limit, it's difficult to go round at 60? Yes, I'm sure it is. Have you tried going over the top? Yeah. Well, please.
The access was agreed at outline application stage, members, so you shouldn't really be taking that into account today, but I think the agent is happy to answer if the chairman wants him to.
Do I want to? Go on then.
The roundabout is going to be realigned. So I would say as you're coming out of Swaffham at 60 mile an hour, you will probably be able to negotiate it slightly better.
Yeah, this meeting is being recorded and you have already stated that you've done 60 right now, so I don't care. Any further questions before we go to the vote? You're all happy? Okay. So for item 6 on 11E, 3PL 2021-0784 at Swaffham, your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Could I have a show of hands, please? 10. Looked unanimous to me.
Yeah.
Yep, unanimous 10. Okay, thanks very much. That's approved. Thanks for your time. Okay, members, we've got item 12 now, which is applications determined by the executive director of place, which are there for your information. And item 13 is our appeals for December and January, again, there for your information. And at this point now, at just gone 2:20, I close this meeting. Thank you.